King 5 News with Lori Matsukawa, Dennis Bounds.
Dennis Bounds. And Dennis, why don't you briefly introduce yourself?
Dennis Bounds, formerly of King 5 News. I didn't think I would ever land in television news.
Yeah.
But I did. I was a very shy kid, and for some reason, I overcompensated. I heard voices in the night on the radio, broadcasters from all points of the country, and thought, that'd be an interesting job to have.
Where I ask my guests, how did you do it and why?
Dennis Bounds. And Dennis, why don't you briefly introduce yourself?
Dennis Bounds, formerly of King 5 News, where I worked for 25 years.
Yeah.
And retired. I'm very flattered that you asked me to your podcast, considering that I've been off the air for almost 8 years now.
Wow.
It's been almost 8 years, but I spent 40 years in the business.
Yeah.
And many different cities before I came to Seattle, but came to Seattle in 1991. You want my broadcast career path?
Let's hear it.
The first time I worked at the campus radio station my senior year at the University of North Dakota.
Yeah.
University of North Dakota.
Oh, boy.
Do not say that other school.
Oh, they pissed me off. Pissed me off.
So I spent...
What's the animal and/or
the bison?
The bison. Well, that makes sense.
And University of North Dakota, formerly the Fighting Sioux, are now the Fighting Hawks.
So we're not upset about the Hawks, but we are the Sioux. You know, there was that one thing they had where they were asking Indians about changing the names, or American Indians.
There's a long story to that. I'll try to make it as short as possible. The NCAA ruled that Indian nicknames had to be eliminated unless you could get the approval of local tribes.
Oh.
And there were two tribes in North Dakota that they asked to approve, one close to Grand Forks, North Dakota, where UND is located. And they voted in favor, I think about 2-1 margin to keep the nickname.
Keep the name.
The other tribe was in the south central part of the state. And they basically just froze it out, saying we've got other big problems to tackle, and we're not going to take up this issue.
Yeah, we aren't going to go in.
So by virtue of their absence of a vote, the name had to go.
That's so interesting because my wife listened to that one with the American Indians and how they were like the Redskins and like, ooh, we kind of liked it, and other ones, so whatever, Cleveland Indians and all, whatever. Today's world is different than mine.
It was, they wanted to change. They didn't get the approval, so the university had to change. And many people I went to school with, forever Fighting Sioux. I have some Fighting Sioux paraphernalia still.
Whoa.
But I now welcome the new nickname. That's what it is, and that's what it will be in the foreseeable future.
In the end, who really cares?
I know it.
I couldn't care less.
It's the same school putting out the same teams that you root for.
Yeah, so just like for me, sports, I love them. I challenge, fight, argue. Pretty much when the game's over, my world moves back to what it is. So anyway, you go back to you're a senior, and they throw you in front of a mic.
I did sports. First semester, I read sports for a couple of the morning newscasts. And then...
Wait, as a senior?
As a senior.
How the hell did you get into that? I mean, why would they let you on?
I was always interested in radio.
Okay.
As a teenager, I was interested in radio, particularly sports. And then after the first semester, the professor who ran the program said, would you like to anchor the program a couple of days a week? And I said, sure. And that was mostly reading introductions to very long packages.
Sure.
And that was long before National Public Radio had a morning newscast.
Okay.
All Things Considered had just been born in the afternoon, but not morning edition. So that's how I got interested in that. And then worked for the airlines, did a little construction out of school, then thought I want to get into the business, the media business. Worked in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, small radio station. My folks lived there at the time. Went to Fargo. Decided to get married.
Where many people die, by the way, Fargo.
Just a few.
In gruesome ways.
In very gruesome ways. That wood chipper is just,
Good machine, though. Like, efficient, but really a little dirty.
It was efficient in the movie. Very efficient. Worked in Fargo part-time and then got a job in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, and then a television job back in Fargo fell into my lap, and that's when I started my TV career.
Wow. So that's a fair amount of jump. I mean, as a family, you're moving around a bit.
Well, at that point in time, you're not moving great distances. I'm single. Then I'm married.
Yeah.
We have no kids. And then worked in Fargo for a year and 9 months. Got a job in Orlando, Florida. When I was in Fargo, I drove down to Minneapolis. I wanted to get to the Twin Cities and work.
Sure.
And I arranged to meet a news director at the independent station on a Saturday and talk to him. And I was far too young to work in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Far too inexperienced. But he knew a guy in Florida, was friends with the news director in Florida, who called him, said, I need a weekend anchor. And the guy in Minneapolis goes, well, I met this guy from Fargo. You may want to take a look at him. So I got the job in Orlando as a weekend anchor.
Wow. So that was your launch into, I guess, really getting yourself. Wait, now that was
from Fargo to Orlando.
But this was on TV.
This was on TV. And I was married at the time, and our first son was born in Orlando.
Neato.
And then a friend I worked with in Orlando got a job. He came over to my house one day, and he says, I got this job offer in Tampa and a job offer in Minneapolis. And I I gushed about Minneapolis. What a great city it is. He took the job up there, and at the time, it was the worst station in the market.
Wow.
And they had an opening eventually for an weekend anchor.
So they needed somebody lousy. Come on in, and what the hell?
They need someone lousy and cheap. And I went up to Minneapolis, then went from Orlando to Minneapolis, worked at 2 different stations in Minneapolis, got the butt end of the stick at the second station, ended up in Shreveport, Louisiana as the main anchor for 5.5 years.
Wow, Shreveport, that's LSU.
No. Well, LSU Shreveport. LSU, the big LSU is down in Baton Rouge.
Yep, you're right.
Shreveport,
Yep.
the northwest part of the state. And then, here's the key. The news director in Orlando ended up in Minneapolis. He hired me across the street in Minneapolis.
Okay.
He eventually ended up in Seattle. And after 5.5 years in Shreveport, called me and went to do the morning news at King TV.
Wow. You know, I always think for our younger audience, which is really who I'm trying to gauge myself towards or gauge the show towards, to let folks know, like, look at the paths people take. And while yours may have been in the same industry, the importance of not burning bridges.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I mean, and the importance of, your competition is not your enemy. You know, there's a lot of people when they're younger, oh, ABC company, they're horrible. No, you know, they are just as smart as you. Bunch of people running around trying to make a buck. And I think a lot of the younger audience, the ones I've worked with, I don't think they're anything Gen whatever the hell it is. I think, my parents thought we were all going to die because we smoked pot. You know, my mother went to church praying for us, and, we made it. The generation I was in was yuppies. We made it. All variations on what our parents were. The next generations, which we tend to criticize, were our children. So it's a little bit of shooting arrows back at yourself, in that you raised them, and they watched you, and they've learned something. And I think also with social media and just the intensity of life, they're confused. I think they're frozen in place, and they don't know what the hell to do. Do they want to be their parents? Well, maybe not. But what do they want to be doing? Working in a coffee shop? I don't want to do that. So that's really the gate of it. And I guess in that end, just speak to that some. Your path when it came to just keeping forward, pushing forward.
I could have never, when I was younger, I could have never thought that I would take such a circuitous route.
Yeah.
In my career. Well, number one, I didn't think I would ever land in television news.
Yeah.
But I did, kind of not by default, by happenstance. It was rather random.
Yeah.
That I fell into TV news. And the thing that I took, big lesson from my folks, and they never pushed me to do anything specific in life.
Yeah.
Just to lead an exemplary life, work hard,
Yep.
Be patient. And I think I learned from them mostly patience and perseverance.
Yeah.
I saw my dad, who was an FBI agent for years.
Wow.
And when we lived in the D.C. area, he had to commute down to Quantico, Virginia to the FBI Academy or downtown to the Justice Building. Got up very early in the morning to get to work. Came back very late at night because of traffic and work.
Yeah.
But he was patient. He taught me to show up.
Yep.
And that's what I like to think I did during my entire career.
Well, I'm sure you did. I mean, you like to think.
And exercise that patience and perseverance. Nothing was handed to me. Nothing really came easily. And I talked to, it's been a couple of years since I've talked to youngsters who want to get into the business and they want to start in Seattle.
Yeah.
And I'm going, you're not going to start in Seattle. You're going to have to go to Yakima or the Tri-Cities or Spokane if you're lucky to start there.
Sure.
Or even move to a different part of the country.
Yeah.
Which is what I ended up doing. I thought I would never work on the West Coast.
Well, yeah, the West Coast.
Never did. Because I was an East Coast guy or a Midwest guy too, mostly. Yeah, but you never know where fate will take you.
No, you don't. And that's similar to me. Somebody had said to me, at 18, you're going to have, for me, 5 daughters, be married for 33 years. You'll be
5 daughters?
Yeah, yes.
Oh, God bless you.
Yes. But, everybody has their reality. So to me, I don't know any different.
Right.
You go, oh, my God. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know. Thank God. All I wanted was healthy children. That was what I wanted. But I would have said, go to hell. I'm not going to Seattle. No way.
And my wife will constantly remind me, and I remind myself too, that, we really hit it big coming to this part of the country.
Well,
because it was only going to be a temporary stop, and it ended up being a permanent place to live.
Wow.
And I couldn't. People ask me, well, now that you're retired, where are you going to live? Seattle.
Yeah. Well,
because all the kids are here and our life is here.
But now in Minneapolis or any of these small places, I presume they're obviously tracking ratings and how do you grow ratings? Like, to me, you get on the TV and I'm presuming there's 3 or 4 other people on the TV at the same time and you're in the cruddy one. How the hell do you get not cruddy?
It takes years and years to build up a newsroom, to bring in good talent, to have that talent do its work well on the air, and to establish a reputation that will make people want to watch.
Some commonality. It seems like there's they hang on to a personality for a long time. I presume they.
But that station eventually did very well. Years out, it did very well. And then I went to the ABC. That was the NBC affiliate at the time. I went to the ABC affiliate. They already had fairly good ratings. And the news director told me, he says, you're doing a pretty good job when you hire an anchor, the first thing you look at, you don't want to see the ratings go down.
This is a bad thing. It's like
it's
sales.
A bad thing.
You don't want to have your sales go down.
You don't want it to go down. But sometimes news management, they want to see constant, steady growth.
Of course.
That sometimes it's just unattainable.
Yeah.
So,
what would you say
and TV now is, of course, totally different.
Wildly different.
With social media, and fewer people watch television news these days than they used to when I retired.
So let's see. What are some of the causes aside from what management? Okay, I'm getting myself all off track here. NBC, ABC. To what extent are the major, the corporate guys influencing you in Minnesota?
In Minnesota or here?
Well, let's say Minnesota, or even Shreveport, just kind of trickle along.
Well, actually, the network really doesn't have any. They don't have any say in how you. We were not owned by NBC or ABC or CBS.
Okay.
We were owned by different independent companies. So the networks had nothing to say about how you operated your news operation.
Sure, they just want their profits, I guess.
Exactly. The important thing, though, about what the networks provided you, and that's true, that was really true in Seattle as well, is particularly for the 11 o'clock news, how well does your network's primetime lineup do compared to the other network's primetime lineup? Sure. So if you have a 10 o'clock program that is the number one program in the country, number one program in Seattle or Minneapolis, and it's leading into your 11 o'clock news, you're going to benefit.
And then I know like things like,
And that's out of your control.
yeah.
You just hope that you've saddled you've saddled the right horse.
So who's out peddling the advertising? Somebody's trying to get them to get advertisers. Somebody to sell soap, something. Are there a handful of sales guys and gals out there running
Oh, there's
around?
always a sales department. And again, I never dabbled in that.
Sure.
I stuck in the newsroom.
Yeah.
I knew some salespeople, but I stuck in the newsroom.
Of course.
So they went out and did their job. And as the years went by, particularly since I retired, a salesperson will not only be selling advertisement on the television station, but on the website as well.
Well, they're spreading it. Yeah, it's just, I guess what you call, I don't know, horizontal, vertical. I can never figure out what marketing it is. Just sell to more people. Just
Sell to more people is right.
Yeah. And so in these towns, let's say for you, I was curious about this. There's bad news, heart-wrenching. And now you're going to have to jump up in front of everybody in some way or another and share this.
You share the facts as straight as possible and with as little emotion as possible.
Which must be
While
difficult.
in the inside, it may be killing you.
Yeah.
I remember going to apartment fire in Minneapolis. I think it may have been the first station. And 3 kids were killed. They died from smoke inhalation.
Ugh.
Small children. And they brought them, they were all, you didn't see them.
Sure.
But they brought the body bag out with all 3 kids in one body bag.
Oh.
That is a hell of a thing to see.
And at this point, you have children.
Yes. Young
God.
kids.
Well, and it's not like,
kids.
I don't have children, so I don't care. But
Right.
As any parent, that is an extra spike in your heart.
So that was hard. Another example of where you may recall, I think it was 2009, there was a spate of police shootings. Police officers were killed.
Yep.
One in Seattle was shot to death on Halloween. Was it Halloween? I can't remember it was in the fall. And then a month or two later, the 4 police officers in Lakewood, Washington were killed.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I was relatively...
That was
I do remember.
It was on a Sunday morning. They were at a coffee shop, and a guy walked in and
oh, man.
executed him. And then a couple months later, Pierce County deputy, I believe, was shot at a domestic violence scene. And for all of those, we covered all of the funerals. And we were on the air for hours covering these funerals. And the second time really hit me. That was for 4 Lakewood officers, and we were on for, it seems like it was 8 hours.
My God.
And at 7 o'clock, I was supposed to do the late news. They said, go home. And that was one time I felt like I wanted to quit television news. Because emotionally, I couldn't show it on the air.
Sure.
But emotionally, it's wrenching. It's gut-wrenching.
So pardon me now, you say not on the air. These are pre-recorded? All these
No. We were
live.
We were live.
Because you said not on the air.
I was not being emotional on the air.
Oh, okay.
But inside me, it was a hell of a thing to have to cover.
How the hell do you keep up 8 hours? I mean,
I don't know.
Just
You have help.
yeah.
You have reporters in the field. We had, who did we have? I think we had the King County Sheriff with us at one time to talk about
And
what was
the
going
hell
on.
is he supposed to say? Oh my Lord.
He said a lot.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Did he?
He knew a lot about the pomp and circumstance, the ceremony that was taking place, and he could give us some good perspective. And on one, we had a widow of a police officer on the air sitting right next to me, and she talked about what the families would be going through.
Oh, must be. She's just numb.
She was absolutely courageous. I wish I could remember her name, but I think at the time her husband was killed a number of years ago, and she had started a support group.
Oh, okay.
And we got her on the air, and she was fabulous. Admired the hell out of her.
Yeah.
Because she was able to provide for us a perspective on what was going on at the ceremony and how the families would be feeling.
How about these, where they
she knew
say-
all about it.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going out to the field, and, sometimes it'll be some younger person, wrapped up in a parka Anyway, so what the transition to that, and then the transition out? Does that person out in the field say, "Hey, you got 30 seconds," or do they say, "Just start talking"?
Usually, and now keep in mind too, I did not do a lot of field work.
No, I mean,
but
you're interacting with them. You're the transition.
And I've done some as well.
Yeah.
They will usually, when the news lineup, if it's during a broadcast, regular broadcast,
Yeah.
they'll be allotted a certain amount of time.
Sure.
And they would have provided some video and maybe a complete package with video and the voice on it, and they'd be introducing it. So, I mean, that's fairly easy to do.
Oh, okay.
Fairly easy to do.
Because sometimes you hear them like, Joe, are you out there?
Yeah, well, when there's breaking news, then you just throw to these people and you just kind of wing it.
Let it rip.
You just kind of wing it.
Okay.
Talk to them, they talk to you, we talk to the audience, and there's a producer in our ear telling us what we're going to do next.
Okay. So, and are you working off of teleprompters?
During the regular broadcast, yes. During breaking news, no.
That must be so hard because you're looking at an audience, and where is this teleprompter, like right in front of you, or is it obviously it's not cast down?
The teleprompter for a regular broadcast is right. There's a pane of glass that's angled at a 45 degree angle right over the camera lens.
Oh, okay.
And right above that is a television monitor with a script, which is inverted, and the reflection comes out perfectly.
And so you have studied. Obviously, you don't walk in there and
you've
just
gone
read
through
the
every
damn thing.
you've gone through every script.
Okay.
And made changes. Sometimes when you're on the set, someone is going to make a change that you don't know about.
Okay.
So you have to be ready to confront that.
Yeah, and act like it's all good.
And act like it's all good.
So, in the end, well, it's no great surprise. You're acting.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. You're reading a script.
Yeah.
But you're reading the script with knowledge in your head about what
the subject
It's
matter
not
is.
like you're reading everything cold.
Yeah.
You know nothing about it.
Okay.
You've gone through the scripts. If you have a question about a particular story, you've talked to that reporter.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going up on the set dumb.
Yeah. I might feel bad. I don't remember. I think the news guy was Renner. Who was the woman who worked with you?
Well, which one?
At the conclusion of your career, there was
Lori
a woman.
Matsukawa.
Okay, and then wasn't the weather guy
Jeff Renner.
Jeff Renner.
Yeah.
Okay. I was reading that last night. And when they bring somebody in there like a new personality, I presume you don't get any say, do you? Or they just say, "In comes Susie."
Well, all the people that I worked with, excuse me, all the people I worked with, I knew at the station to begin with.
Oh, okay.
Other than when I was introduced them to. One time, they were, I worked with Gene Anderson about 21 years total.
Wow.
But at one time, at a certain point in her career, she wanted to get off the 11 o'clock news. So they were auditioning for the 11 o'clock news anchor. And I did some stuff with Lori. I worked with Lori anyway.
Yeah.
Because she filled in for Gene constantly. And they brought in a couple of other people from out of town. They ended up hiring Margaret Larson from over at Cairo.
Ooh.
And I did no audition with her.
Okay.
None at all. But they said, well, we're going to bring her in and work with Dennis.
So, I'm presuming you're chatting around with her before she should just plop at your desk.
Well, they hired her. I did not. News director called me and says, we're going to hire Margaret Larson. They told me that. Well, great. I figure I can work with anyone.
Yeah. Any sense of intimidation that here comes this, like, oh, they're going to bump me out because she's going to become more popular?
No, because we work as a team.
Okay.
It was when I went from the morning news to the evening news, it was slightly intimidating sitting next to Gene Anderson, because she's the queen of news in town and had been there for so long. But we got our thing going. We got our dance going. And it worked just great. And we stay in contact today in retirement.
I saw you, I think, a 6 or 7 minute clip of you. I think it was Gene. Was it you were on with a woman from, I guess, an established TV broadcaster now? And they said, hey, we're going to come back and talk to a couple of our retired anchors, and I don't know if you remember that piece, but they came in and chatted around. I was just watching it on before you came in.
I'm trying to remember how many.
Well, you've got a lot, I'm sure.
How many times I've been on the air post in retirement.
Yeah. Or you don't have to remember it.
I won't remember that.
Yeah. But anyway, the two of you were just chatting around like, best of besties. And then I'm presuming there are some people who you don't have the energy with, or there isn't kind of a flow. And then you have to just make do and just find a way to be close with them.
No lie. That never happened at King.
Really?
Never. I enjoyed the people I worked with, professionally and personally.
Vitally important.
Never had a problem.
Yeah. That's one of the things that in employment, when you're hiring somebody, and I now consult with a company, so I'll take these young men or women through this, is what are the intangibles? Because pay is always, I want more money. But when somebody leaves a business or moves from one company to another, and you maybe wait, these HR companies wait, maybe 6 months, let the dust settle, and go back and say, why did you leave, Susie's company? Mm-hmm. It'll almost always be, I felt like I was a cog in the machine. I didn't like my peer group. I didn't agree with the methods. I didn't have any personal relationship with people. So it's none of it's money. So what I'm getting at is the same thing with you. If you ran into somebody who was just miserable, I imagine that could impact you wanting to do the job.
I never, particularly at King, I never hit that point in time where I was miserable with anyone I worked with.
Oh, good for you.
They were all good. They were all great. And if we had arguments, we argued editorially.
Yeah.
Whether this story should be there or that story should be there or that piece of video we should be running.
Okay.
And those arguments happen all the time in newsrooms, and they should.
Sure.
Those kinds of discussions should happen.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you get a good newscast together.
So you said you were doing the 11 o'clock, which my wife will still listen to regularly. Pretty consistently.
That was I was doing the 5, the 6:30, the 7, the 10,
mm-hmm.
and the 11.
It's a lot of work.
It is.
And I presume in some instances you're repeating the same stories over and
over.
Oh,
totally.
Yeah. So.
No one at home is sitting and watching 3.5 hours of news on King 5, even if I'm anchoring it.
Now.
They may watch an hour and a half, but they're not going to watch the whole 3.5 hours.
I
wouldn't watch 3.5 hours.
I remember a lot of the younger women saying, I'm going to tune in for all 3 hours. He is such a hunk.
Come on.
Never heard it. Never once.
Never. No.
And now, when you are getting into, let's say, contract negotiations, we don't have to get into all the compensation and so on.
I had an agent.
Okay, an agent. So, are they typical multi-year deals?
It always varies. It varied from person to person. Mm-hmm. I had an agent. My agent died.
That's okay. That ended that relationship.
Then I negotiated on my own.
Okay.
When TV was at its height, you'd get a contract and it would be multi-year.
Sure.
And at one point, then it became, no, we've got 6 month options, 3-month options in some cases. And I have no idea what it is now.
Yeah.
But it all varies from person to person.
A day. Nowadays.
Yes. Well, no.
You're out of here.
Now, that would not be a contract.
Yeah, but as you're moving along, there must be some comfort that you're building a brand.
Well, you build a brand in your specific market.
Yeah, well, okay, but a good market like Seattle has some power.
I think if you stay on the air long enough, you develop something of a brand. And I always considered it very complimentary at some point when people would refer to the newscast as, Gene and Dennis, as a duo.
You've made it. You're.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, now you got a brand.
That's pretty good. Now, people will always know Gene for far longer than they know me because she was on the air for far longer. And some of the other people at the station too.
Mm-hmm.
I worked there only 25 years.
Oh, yeah, a little short stay, as I recall.
No, it's a short stay.
A short timer.
Gene was there for 40 some odd years. Lori Matsukawa was there for well over 30. Jeff was there for well over 30.
Well,
So.
25 is no short stint.
No, it's not.
You know.
No, it's not.
Yeah, because you, if I'm presuming in front of your audience, you're growing a little older.
Yes. What was once dark hair
Because I saw
is
some
now
of your,
silver.
Because I saw some of your older ones with both you and the woman who you're referencing, and it was just so funny the clothing, her hairdo, everything, and I hate to tell you, better looking, but not as distinguished. Not as distinguished.
We had, it was last November. Excuse me. Last November we had a gathering of the station, current and old folks, to mark the 75th anniversary of King.
Wow, been around.
And they had a bunch of pictures up on the wall, and they had a picture of the morning news, me and Joyce Taylor.
Okay.
And my God, she hasn't changed.
Uh-huh.
I have.
They don't give you a before and after.
I didn't need one.
Or you don't want to see it. I don't want to see me now.
Well, you know what? If you've made it this far, that's not bad. So,
Well, you know, all joking aside, you're a nice looking guy,
Thank you.
And that must have some. I don't know. Well, yeah, it's got to have some attractiveness. I mean, you can't get
you
up
have
front
to
of-
look. You have to look presentable on the air.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they don't want folks at home don't want to watch the newscast with an anchor as a huge wart on his nose.
Mm-hmm. He's pointing at me, by the way, in case anybody like you.
Or hair that's all askew.
Yeah, yeah.
But of course, these days, news people they're not wearing ties all the time. They're wearing sweaters, and it's a different world.
So when you bring a new guy in, a new pup with you, I'm probably like me. I'm presuming you can quickly. Are you giving them tips like, hey, you look like crap, or your diction's not good, or are you giving them tips when they're younger?
You mean when people come into
Some
came into
young
the station?
folk. Yeah.
I never had to give too many tips. People would ask me advice, though. Some college kids in the last couple of years would ask me advice about being in the business.
Sure.
I just say, be presentable.
Mm-hmm.
Dress professionally.
Sure.
Present yourself in a professional manner.
Well, that's what people want.
That's what people want is right.
Yeah. So now, let's say, okay, now here's one. I meant to ask this. You mentioned about viewership. Now, I've looked around, obviously Fox, CNN, MSNBC, and I still think that the major news at 5 o'clock gets the biggest audience. I'm pretty sure of that.
I couldn't say for sure. Back in my day, the 5 o'clock news and the 6:30 news were the big news audiences.
And in Seattle, dominated.
In Seattle, correct.
So
and I don't know what I have not seen the numbers, in 8 years.
Yeah.
So
well,
I don't know.
because I watch it just because, not all the time, but I'm always curious to see, these newer ones, Fox, whoa, and I'm not speaking as to the content. I don't watch much of it anymore. In the past 8 to 10 years, it's just been designed to either, I watch one and I'm like, yeah, those other guys are jerks. Then I watch the other one and I'll be like, ooh, I can't stand them. And they're saying, I'm like the perfect consumer where I'm either happy or pissed, and I've got nothing in the middle, So it's just you're furious. But I started to notice that they do not draw the audience of like the NBC News at a national level. I don't know if you've looked at that, but it caught me surprised because of how much hype you hear about these, the CNNs and Foxes and all that.
Are you talking about cable news?
You define the two.
Well, no, cable news would be. See, cable news is different from King 5, local news.
Yeah. Oh no, but I mean at a national level. You bring on the 5 o'clock national news and blah 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 blah, blah, blah boom, and here is. My understanding is that those shows drive a bigger audience than whoever is their competing person on the CNNs and the cable news.
It should.
Yeah.
It should. Again, but I don't look. I haven't looked at the numbers in a long time.
Yeah.
Because I don't care.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
Anymore.
That's a point.
I really don't.
I wouldn't care. But pardon me. So do you know on a generally regular basis, say when you're working with Seattle, maybe 1.5 million, possibly, maybe 1.5 million for a while. Now it's up to, I think, like 3.5, the metro area.
Probably,
But,
I think it's closer to 4.
Yeah, and growing. So now, do you know do you know how many people are turning on their TVs for you on a given night? It's Wednesday night. We'll probably have 250,000 viewers. Or
again, I don't know what it is now. When I was working, every morning, a ratings sheet would come out.
Of course, I imagine.
And you'd have the ratings, the share number, how many people are watching total across the board. I think a ratings point would equal about 9 or 10,000 viewers.
Okay, so you're probably getting 10 times 30.
No, if a good rating at the 5 o'clock news, again, way back when, would be about 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
So again, 120,000 households. More people may be watching in the households. But
wow,
approximately that's as
you're
I recall.
getting in a lot of homes.
Yeah, you're talking to a lot of people.
Yeah.
You're talking to 3, 4, 5 T-Mobile parks.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to draw some comment from the audience.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's weird though when you stare into a camera. It's hard to imagine that you're talking to 200,000 people.
Well, we are now. So it's challenging for you.
Now I'm scared as hell.
Yeah. Well, look, maybe someday. You never know. Obviously podcasts nowadays are hard things to market. And thankfully, I'm doing this predominantly. Of course, I want to draw an audience and for all the reasons that anybody's competitive and interested. But I just love talking. I love to talk to people. I love to meet people. I've always had an ability to communicate. And so someone like you it's just fun. And to me, to meet somebody in such a different lifestyle. But now back to Seattle is generally a lower crime area versus the East Coast, obviously, significantly. So what would be, let's just see, you divide the news up into different segments, but like you're going to come on. Do you start, obviously, based on the day's news, but what sequence will you go into? Is there
You mean what leads the newscast first?
Yes.
It depends on it depends on the day's news.
Yeah.
It depends on the day's news.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a slow day, crime will most likely lead will be off the top. If the legislature's in session and something big is happening, maybe that will lead.
Yeah.
Politics will lead quite a bit
fun. Yeah.
this year. Yeah, It's not politics is not fun anymore.
This is going to be a disaster.
It really depends on what's happening during the day.
Yeah. For anybody out there who I think the younger audience knows, but for me, I just turned off the news, unfortunately, and a lot of the media probably 8 years ago. It just got me too upset. It didn't provide me anything remotely objective. I didn't feel like anymore. And I also didn't, it seemed to be so much, I don't know what, half misinformation, just rebel rousing. And I just said, life's too short. So I moved over to the very complex NFL radio station, which all day I listened to, and there's like 5 of them, So like the Eagles win, and I'm searching for all the Eagles' good things, They'll say the Seattle Seahawks, the hell with them, I'm moving on.
You can't say that in front of me.
That's right. But I'm constantly, I have all of them because it's mindless. It's these people calling in. I'm like, do you have a job? I mean, what? Talking about the right tackle for Seattle on Tuesday morning. I'm like, geez, how? But the other ones are that I always forget about is truck drivers. They'll come on and talk forever. They ain't got nothing to do. They're sitting there driving down a highway, and no, boy, they have comments. But so that has become my major news. Oh, I'll listen to, what's the main one? It's Channel 1000 on the news. I'll listen to that for just general drib drabs through the day. What the hell's the name of Como? No, wait. No, that's you, wasn't it, Como? No, you were Cairo.
1,000.
Yeah, 1,000, the radio station.
Oh, it used to be Como. It's now, I forgot the call letters.
Yeah,
They changed the call letters.
Yeah, but it's 10, it's 1,000.
It's
I
all
know
news,
that.
right.
Yeah,
10,
and that's pleasant. You just slap it on, and what's the weather, what's going on, what's
get the traffic, get a little flavor for the news.
Yeah. I remember I used to listen to Howard Stern, who, by the way, as much as a shock jock, I do think he's one of the funniest guys I've ever listened to. Once you get past he's a smart guy. He does all his raunch in the morning when the truck drivers are in. I mean, I've read up on him, and he's like, that's when, smart guy. I've known people who knew him, and they also said he's a eloquent, nice guy, smart guy. But once he gets on there, he's playing the game. So the raunch ends. Okay, then he and Robin, who is his sidekick, will chat, and that's what I listened to. It was just hilarious because he was just so blunt about some of the things, whatever. Racial conflict, he may not attack one, but he'll be very candid as to what his views are. They're pretty straight down the line,
Only time I listened to Howard Stern was a long time ago at the beach. We used to go to the beach, Bethany Beach, Delaware.
Yeah, okay, I know it well.
And he was on, I think at the time, WNBC.
Yep, he may have been. Well,
long before Sirius XM radio and satellite. And Robin was a sidekick then.
Yeah.
I found him kind of amusing then. But
yeah, he was playing the shock game for a long time, and that was very unappealing. Even for me, it was like, okay, I've heard enough about boobs and girls' asses, and I don't need that. Once he turned more recently, I want to make this about Howard Stern, by the way. I'm talking about formats.
Get him on your podcast.
Yeah.
There the ratings will go.
Yes, they will.
Sky
they
high.
Will. He'll come for free. Easy. But anyway, no, so now he does these long formats with like Bradley Cooper, Jeremy Renner, and they're much more enjoyable. But anyway, enough of that. So now you're a face in the community. I mean, when you're going out to dinner, when you're moving around in the city.
Not as much anymore.
No, that's okay. That's
That's fine.
You're a distinguished man of honor.
When I was on the air.
Yeah.
And people in Seattle are really, really good about giving you your privacy.
Yeah, more so than sometimes is appealing to me.
Which is really nice.
Uh-huh.
But you can always tell when they kind of do the side look, and that they are thinking, I've seen that guy.
Yeah.
I've seen that guy before.
I'm thinking, did it aggravate you anytime you're out?
Never.
Really?
Never. And I've never been accosted by someone who was pissed off at something I did or said on the air.
Now you would be.
Or that the station did.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And if I was accosted now, I'd give it right back to him.
Oh, why not? Yeah. What are you going to do? You're trying to make a living, and these people are just being assholes.
But now it doesn't happen that often, but occasionally be in a checkout line or somewhere, and
somebody will recognize you.
I watched you when I was growing up.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's flattering.
It is. It is.
And I mean, people are...
It will always be flattering, and I will always enjoy it.
Of course. I mean, that's your career. You've been in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned going from a smaller station to a bigger station. Like when you're in Shreveport. Sorry. Okay. Not Baton Rouge.
No, it's far from Baton Rouge.
A little different culture.
It's a culture away from Baton Rouge.
Yeah. And so tell me, you're not from this town, which I won't say again. Shreveport.
You got it.
Got it. Bingo. And so now you've hit, obviously, I know the area, significantly different culture. So what's that like? You're not from there.
I got used to culture shock.
Yeah.
Because I went from Virginia to North Dakota for college. So I've been all over the country.
Yeah.
So I had that culture shock taken care of. I got used to it.
Yeah.
And living in Florida, then Minneapolis, and down to Shreveport, then up to Seattle, all different culture changes.
But in one, as a small, like a Shreveport is it's a more unique. I mean, that's a southern town.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Very much southern.
Uh-huh.
But I got used to it. Every place I've been I found something good out of it.
All the different, little twists and turns of a culture and how unique they are. And I think a lot of people lump them, like, oh, that's the South. No. No, you have very distinctive, and even the Northeast, the Midwest. I always found the Midwest, a lot of them, so interesting. What was it? Missouri's the show me state. And it is, it's, you don't go in there and whiz bang. They just want to see you're going to do what the hell you said, and we're going to watch you.
I was thinking about this last night in anticipation of this question. If you look at politics today, the political divide between rural, urban, regional divides, religious divides, and if you spend all your day listening to talk radio or on social media, you think the country's going to hell.
Oh, of course.
And in one sense it is, because we have serious problems.
Yes, we do.
But that diversity, if you think about 20 or 30 years ago, people celebrated the diversity of this country.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have to travel overseas to experience a different culture.
Yeah.
Just drive from Seattle to Louisiana.
Yeah.
Or
if
anywhere
that
on the
matters,
East Coast.
San Francisco.
Yes.
Or anywhere, Boise, places. I still think that exists. We just don't celebrate it. We
should.
We should, and I do. A guy working for me, had worked for me for 35 years and still is with the company who bought me. His name's Glenn Sacco. Great guy. He's from Brooklyn, but he's from Brooklyn, and he moved to Philly, right? And his life, he considers himself pretty much a Philadelphian. But he has this quick wit, humor, and a strong accent. And when we first started selling together, I told him a few times, just slow down a little. You're moving too fast. But he would then try to take away his accent. And I said, no. Dude, that's a world-known accent. And it's beautiful. So, never change it. When you go down south, boy, be New York. I'm Philly. People like it. They'll act like they don't, but they cherish it. And I always loved it the South. Maybe you recall this, but they would say the E's were different. I'd say, oh, is Ben there? And they would go, Ben? And I would be like, yeah. And then sometimes I would actually, this was really embarrassing, what I would say, how do you spell that name? And they would be like, B-E-N. And I'd be like, okay, Ben. All right, good. Well, then can I talk to Ben? But I just love that stuff.
I found, though, if you move from one part of the country to another, you will slowly meld those accents.
Sure, I'm sure.
Because I found, moving from Minneapolis to Shreveport, I never sounded Southern, but my enunciation might get a little relaxed.
Yeah.
More so than if I lived elsewhere.
Sure.
And I had my kids adopted up in the upper Midwest. They always dangle their prepositions.
Yeah. Okay.
You want to come with? You want to come with me? That's the proper way.
Oh, my mother. No. Dangling prepositions. Bad.
And we moved down to Shreveport, and after a couple of months, I think it was my daughter, are you fixing to go with? Fixing.
Over
to go
yonder?
I remember she melded a Southern expression with a Northern dangling preposition.
Yeah, it's like Cajun, just French, English, whatever the hell, just make it up. But it is a cool thing, and I have come to just love it about the country. I also don't think there's the cultural divides that we think. Pardon me, I don't think that the political divides are as distinct as we like to draw them in the news. They are distinct, but it's not. It always seems to be it's the small minority that today it's some type of fluidity within gender, and when you're listening to news, you would think, oh my gosh, that's everywhere, and it's accepted. I don't really care, but it is not everywhere. And you listen to the news, and you're like, oh my gosh, wow, I'm missing out on something.
Yeah.
Or we're going to have an argument about bathrooms. And I'm like, wow. Is that everywhere?
If you're at home listening to talk radio all day, or you have cable news on all day, your view of the world will be totally skewed.
Yeah. Yeah, it will. It will.
So, and one of the things that my wife keeps reminding me, because I get pissed off these days quite
who doesn't?
often. She says, you know, and just back away from watching too much news or listening to too much or looking at too much social media. Just get away from that.
Well, you're unlike me. You're a child of the industry. It's, you know, like I'm a bad guy. If I walk through,
it's hard for me to walk away from keeping track of what's going on.
Yeah. And I walk down the supermarket aisle. My wife will just be like, I'm leaving. I'll be looking at the potato chip bag, staring at the, you know, you talk about the bag geek, but it's my life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for you, you're watching it in the same way. It's your life. You know,
exactly.
If you could drop it, you never would have done it so long.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't watch as much as I used to.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I'm on social media too much. Yeah. I admit I plead guilty.
Okay.
Again, sometimes I have to step away.
Which social media do you think you use more than another?
Well, I used to be Twitter. I got off Twitter.
Okay.
It became too toxic.
Okay.
And I went over.
Yeah, it did.
I went over to the Threads.
Okay.
And which is a little bit better, but it will become toxic as well.
Yeah, they all
as
will.
People move from Twitter to Threads. So I use that. Twitter was always very good for keeping up with breaking news, stuff that happened right away.
Yeah, it was.
Threads is getting better, a little bit better.
Yeah.
Facebook, it's totally for social purposes.
Yes. Yeah.
I want to see my siblings and their kids and their grandkids. I want to see pictures. That's all I want. And if I see something political on there, boom, I exit out.
Good God.
I don't want to see that.
You know, now what I use Twitter for is I'm a little bit of a weirdo history geek. So I have Rome in ancient times, Greek archaeology. I love the Middle Ages. I just love them. So it's always something about kings chopping other kings' heads off.
So you enjoy Game of Thrones?
Yeah, actually not. But people tell me it was great, but I only watched like one season.
I never saw it.
Yeah, a couple of my brothers were just I don't know. Then once I got far enough behind, I was like, oh my God, I got to slog through 4 seasons, and that's enough out of me. That's enough.
The older I get, the less gore I want to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Make it happy. Make it happy.
Exactly.
You know, rom-coms. Things that at the end, that guy loves her, and I knew it.
I do like suspense and intrigue and political thrillers. I enjoy those.
Oh, yeah. They're always good ones. They're always good ones. If you're working at a station, and maybe you have or have not, I hope maybe you haven't, which would be good, and its viewership starts to plunge, or maybe you've seen competitors, is there something what would you say is, you know, like I
they fire people.
But
they fire the managers, then they fire the news anchors, then they get down to the reporting staff.
You can see the brush fire started. You're like, oh my God, run!
There's a conflagration. Everything just blows up,
and that's because of viewership dropping.
Yeah.
But do you have any sense for the cause of that? You know, why would one guy be doing well? Obviously, the personalities like you, driving audiences constantly by your dashing good looks and
remarkable professional presentation.
Bum.
Thank you very much.
But I mean, you know, I'm just curious if there's something, you know, as to what happened. Why the hell would somebody go plunging down?
Well, fortunately, I have not been in that position.
Well,
was not in that position.
I'm saying, but you're watching other people.
You know what? I never watched other people.
Oh.
I never did. When I was at home, on the weekends, I'd watch King. I figured news management is watching the competition to see what they're doing. I don't care. I can only control what I can control and enjoy the people that I worked with, and I watch King to this day when I do watch local news.
Do you?
Because there's still people I worked with who are still at the station.
Yeah. And there's these guys who jump in and do, some of them are like, oh gosh, a guy named Curly. I don't know if you remember John.
Oh, John Curley.
Yeah. Actually, he's from outside of Philly. But so he would jump in and do something that wasn't a very long segment.
That was, he was on Evening Magazine for years.
Yeah.
And then he did I anchored some of the July 4th celebrations for many, many years.
Yeah.
And he was part of that.
Okay.
So he didn't do much. I can't recall him jumping in doing any news.
But that must not be a very high compensation if you're jumping in and just doing short bits.
Well, he was employed by Evening Magazine.
Oh, okay.
At King. So
Okay.
that was his job.
Let's go back to your career. Talk us a little bit about just your children. How'd you meet your wife?
At college.
Was it love at first sight?
No, but it was attraction at first sight.
Well, that's not uncommon.
Which is
with
not
men.
bad.
Yes, you need the chemistry.
Yes. It was at UND, North Dakota, my sophomore year, my first year there. And she and a bunch of her friends were building a snowman down in the quad, the dorm. And I was looking out there. She says, "Come on down." So I did. And my roommate was giving me grief too from upstairs.
Yeah, sure.
Said, "You're making a snowman with all the, how come you're down there?" She says, "Well, I'm with all the girls."
Yep. Gee, figure it out.
Go figure it out. And that's how I met her.
Mm-hmm. And then when would you say in that relationship did it come to you that I'm going to marry this girl?
Oh, not till out of college.
Mm-hmm.
We dated through college, and then we parted ways. And she came back to visit. I was in West Virginia, and she came back to visit, and it seemed to click then.
Yeah, a little more.
And after that, I went up to Minneapolis, and we decided to get married, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and when you moved around a bit as a single, as a couple, and then you had a child?
Yeah, we were in Detroit Lakes. When we got married, I was in radio in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota.
We're back to Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. Detroit Lakes. Well, okay,
That's
bad.
50 miles east of Fargo.
Okay.
And then I got the TV job in Fargo.
Okay.
And worked there, went to Orlando. We had our first child there. Went up to Minneapolis to work. And the first station I worked at, my daughter was born. She was born in a hospital right next to it used to be the Metrodome. Now it's, I don't know what they call it now, the U.S. Bank Stadium.
Yeah, whatever.
And then went to the second station in Minneapolis, and my youngest son was born.
Neato. Kids.
And we moved to Shreveport, and then came up here. No fourth kid. Shreveport for 5.5 years. No. There was no forthcoming. Nothing was forthcoming.
Yeah. Thank God.
And then moved here, and at one point we finally decided I had an opportunity. I had a couple of job offers when I was doing the morning news. I went to interview at WGN in Chicago.
Okay, that would have been a big one.
That had been a big one. That was for the nightly news too. They decided to elevate the morning guy, and then they offered me the morning news. And I declined that. And actually, in Minneapolis too, the station I left was thinking about hiring me. Mm-hmm. But it just didn't feel right.
I'm presuming your pay gets better as you move up in the metro areas.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Substantially from when you hit Seattle, or you don't have to give me the number, obviously.
No, it was when I went to the morning news, I got a heck of a pay bump.
Good.
And what they were offering me in Minneapolis, though, wasn't really that much more. And it felt bad. And at that point, we decided, I was told that there may be a change at King. I was in the mix. And we just decided, the kids are of a certain age that we don't want to move them anymore.
Yeah. That was same with mine. I moved an 8 and a 10, one of which was Bridget. And to this day, I didn't realize that, I don't think it had a huge emotional impact, but how it was a significant thing at that age. I guess you're just not thinking. I was thinking, but I was driven by my career. My wife and I were in there. We had a 2-year-old, an 8 and a 10. Then we came out here. Oh, something happened with the change of weather, barometer pressure, but we ended up with whatever. It was wonderful. And I do think, I was raised Irish Catholic, but I'm not intensely religious, but I am intensely spiritual. And I do think that when I watched a child be born, it was the first time that I had my first true experience where there's a God. There's a God. And I'm done with, oh, it's evolutionary alien. Go to hell. That's a miracle, and it came from something more powerful than me. Okay, now look, I'm getting sick of this conversation. Okay, you're old. All right.
71.
71. Okay, I'm 63, so I ain't that old.
You're a young man. I remember when I was 63.
Oh, just out of your diapers. But let's close this out real quickly. Your career ended. Was that relative to this Tegna? Was it a decision to leave, or do you feel as though it was a little bit of a push out the door, or how'd that all go?
I was very fortunate. It was a buyout.
Yeah, I knew that.
We moved. The studio was Dexter Avenue, moved to a new facility across from T-Mobile Park.
Okay.
And the first couple weeks we were there, the newsroom was there. The sheet came out. They're offering buyouts for certain people. If you've been with a station for 15 years and you were over a certain age, and you could leave. And two anchors were on the list. I was one of them, and Lori Matsukawa was the other person. And but they'd only let one anchor leave, and Lori had seniority, although she's younger. Anyway, she decided she had more work she wanted to do. I took it because I was close enough, at 63 and a half at the time. They'd pay me for another year. That gets me close enough to Medicare.
Yeah.
And Medicare and Social Security. And that's when I took it.
Yeah. I was 59 when I sold the business. 63 now. They just re-upped me for a contract. I actually said to them, it's really not the pay.
Yeah.
The guy who negotiated with me was my partner. But I just said, I want to get the benefits through with Cobra through to my 65th year. That's what I want. And if you can accommodate me, that would be greatly appreciated. And he did it. So now,
and I had the benefits all till I was 65.
Yeah. So there wasn't any like these big jerks came in and.
No, and by that time too, I'd been doing so much news in the evenings, it could get a little tiring. And it was time.
So. Yeah,
it was a good time.
Okay.
And since then, I still have stayed active. Occasionally, I will do a job for the Seattle channel.
Oh, cool.
Producer who I just adore and worked with at King also took the buyout and went to work at the Seattle channel.
Okay.
So I'll front some of the programs occasionally, and I still will MC events.
Good.
For organizations I've worked with over the years.
Oh, I'd love to know about them if you get a chance to let me know.
I'm actually doing one tonight. So
are you?
Yes.
I'm not going.
They're
Sorry.
serving steak.
So
it's not an auction.
How close? Okay, so let's circle around to the big question that I like to ask people is, quickly, what would be I think you've already given this, but what would be your advice to a 25 or 35-year-old individual who's floundering a little bit?
This is a big pause. That's good. I've never been asked that question.
That's why the Mark Howley Show is so special.
You have to try a number of different things to find what you really like to do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say find your passion.
Yeah.
But find something you like, you're good at, and you can stick with. And be patient and be perseverant.
I think I couldn't hear. In one way or another, I tell people, get in the game. Mm-hmm. If you're on the sidelines looking in, you're not in the game. And unfortunately, that's just the big leagues. So lastly, my last question, the final question to Dennis Bounds. Why did you do this? Why?
I was a very shy kid, and for some reason, I overcompensated. I heard voices in the night on the radio of broadcasters from all points of the country and thought, that'd be an interesting job to have. And where I did get sidetracked a couple of times, I did find my way into the media. And if I may say so, I think I made a pretty damn good career out of it.
You did. Humility is a wonderful thing, but what did one of the famous politicians is? Stop being so humble. You're not that great.
I'm going to put that on my tombstone.
But anyway, you did, and there's no question.
Thank you.
And I hope you do take that as well, it is a compliment. So, what's the other thing when people compliment? Oh, stop. And then when they stop, I didn't really mean stop. But with that, we are going to say goodbye. Again, this is the Mark Howley Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Dennis, why don't you say goodbye?
To all you good folks out there, goodbye and good luck.
Wonderful. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Nice meeting you.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah. Turn this damn thing off. Crying out loud, this guy stunk. Thank you for listening to the Mark Howley Show. If you found this story as intriguing as we did, give us a like, share the episode, and subscribe. For other stories like this one, you can check us out on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you stream your content. We can also be found on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at The Mark Howley Show. New episodes every other Friday. Adios.